The car felt pretty good on the few laps I was out there, so we'll put an engine in it and suck it up and see what we can get out of it. We're probably going to wind up starting in the back anyway, so we're going to just get it in the show and get it ready for happy hour.
I know you want to do it just for the fun of it, so you can start in the back and show everybody you can come to the front.
Not necessarily. I'd like to start up front, but if that's what happens, that's what happens. But I think the car's good enough. We just got to get the engine tuned up, and we had a little problems with that this morning, but I think we'll be fine.
And Mike Joy, I've done my research down here, and there's no truth to the rumor that when John Reiser made this deal with Wally, he was actually trying to get Robin, Wally's wife, to be the driver, because she, after all, is the better driver in the Dallenbach family.
There is a lot of truth to that, actually.
Robin was quite a talent when she drove for Jim Stacy and others in the Winston Cup circuit. No doubt about that, as Robin McCall. Here's Brad Teague. His 2 laps include a best of 169.109. He's the second qualifier so far. Welcome back to Kansas, where local driver Rick Sanders from Leawood is behind the wheel of the number 77, which this week is the Midwest Ford Dealers 610 Radio Ford. His lap 34.406, 156.9 miles per hour, slowest of the 3.
Looking at Scott Riggs is getting ready to come up here and take the green flag and start his qualifying run. I was talking to their teammate earlier, Jason Keller, and he was complaining about that because he went down in the corner. He said this is he started to make the turn in the corner. He said the car was darting around a lot, and they didn't know whether to work on the car or just kind of deal with it, because a lot of guys were complaining about the car moving around in the corner on entry. It was really upsetting some of these guys.
But look at Scott Riggs in the Nesquik Ford. He's sucked right down to the racetrack in the corners.
And right here in turn 4, with that tailwind being down the backstretch, that's where it'll really also mess with the car, because it'll make the front end want to push, not turn on the exit of turn 4, because it's blowing across turn 4.
Riggs blows everybody so far away with a lap of 30.59, 176.5.
He was one of the teams that elected to come out here and test about a week ago as well. Of course, drawing down to near the end of this season, not many teams had a test left, but this was one place they elected to save to come here and test for this race. You know, this is the 3rd year we've been running this racetrack, and what I always hear drivers talk about and teams talk about, and Scott slows up a couple of tenths on his second lap, is normally after you've got 2 or 3 years on a racetrack, especially a place here like Kansas where you have the harsh winters and the hot summers, that they get bumps in the racetrack. They said this place is still just as smooth as it was the day they built it.
Now, last week the Busch Series was off, so everybody had a chance to cool down from some of the things that happened at Dover, like this. Scott Riggs and David Green, thick of the point battle and getting together. That's dropped David Green to 4th in the championship chase, while Riggs is 2nd, coming in here just 32 points behind Brian Vickers.
And that was quite a lick that David Green took on that outside wall as well.
Yeah, the contact from Riggs was very minor, but all it took.
At the speed you're running at Dover, Delaware, it don't take much of a bump to send you spinning around.
Here's the Timberwolf Pontiac for David Green, who, like Riggs, has 2 wins and 2 poles on the season so far.
Yeah, right now David Green is driving, believe it or not, Caesar. It's the name of this race car. It's got a nickname, and they call it Caesar. And again, this has been one of his more favorite race cars as he comes in this racetrack here, and he's right now the fastest guy here, and surprise at that. David Green has really had a great year as far as qualifying is concerned, and they've been able to turn in some pretty impressive runs. Now, the last time he raced here was in 2001. He finished 13th and started 18th, but he was here last year spotting for a couple of guys, so he's been here all 3 years. But he said this racetrack's a whole lot like Kentucky as well as Las Vegas, and he likes both those racetracks, and he really feels like he's got an opportunity to gain some points this weekend.
Green he's quicker on his second lap, picks up a 10.
And if you notice, he ran down on the apron coming off turn 4, got that little bit of burst of speed off turn 4, and he picked it up a 10th, puts him on the pole right now. How about it, Marty?
Well, 3-time NASCAR Busch.
That's right, Mike. A couple of weeks ago, Scott Riggs and David Green, you guys were at war with each other, and now you're talking to each other. That's a good sign.
Burned his head. Well, my black eyes went away after David beat me up after the race, but I mean, like I say, last week was the last race, and you know, after talking to David, I know he was mad about it, and I wish somehow we could, rewind it and make it not happen. And I hate such small contact causes such, big problems for his guys and his team. But I can't rewind it. And like I said, I think David knows me good enough that I think he knew how bad I felt about it.
Time to let bygones be bygones, David.
Oh yeah, we got 7 races to go here, and the story and the script's already been written. It's Scott and I and Brian Vickers, all these guys. We're going to be right on top of each other all year long, and when it's all said and done, we're going to probably have a crow to pick with one another when it's all done. But Scott and I just got ours out of the way a little bit earlier, so maybe. But hey, it's racing, they say, and it's unfortunate. It's early in the race. I think we had to do all over. I told him, hey, if you'd give me a 4th place, we'd call it even, but it didn't quite work out that way. But got a great car again here today, and the way the NASCAR deal goes, him and I will probably end up starting side by side, or him behind me, or whatever, and that'll bring out how true racers we really are and respect one another. So it'll be all right.
Mike, what do you think? Is this feud over yet?
Oh, there's no feud. It's an incident, and they realize they've got to race each other every week the rest of the season. You might as well smile about it, because it could happen again.
You keep that chip on your shoulder, you're going to take yourself right out of this points battle.
How many times have we seen that?
Yes, we have.
Joe Nemechek is 4th fastest, right behind David Green and Scott Riggs. Marty?
This has got to be an intense conversation. Jamie McMurray and Michael Waltrip.
One of 19 who broke the track record unofficially in practice for this event. Mike Harmon has timed in 11th, 31.936, 169 miles an hour. Here is Larry Gunselman, who's just about a 1/10 of a second back of that on his first lap in the 31W Insulation Chip.
Something we talk about, and trust me, next week at Lowe's Motor Speedway in Busch qualifying and Cup qualifying, we'll be talking about at track temperature. But I think, Jeff, and jump in here, there reaches a point where even if it cools down a little bit, it's already cool. I don't know that there's going to be an advantage or disadvantage throughout this whole qualifying session.
Only thing that would concern me right now, Larry, is that, you get to a certain point, you're right. I don't think it affects you that much. But sometimes if it gets too cool, these race tires don't heat up enough to really get the maximum grip out of them. So sometimes the cold weather or cooler weather can be a disadvantage as much as it can be an advantage. So I think a lot of these teams will be watching this and trying to keep up with what is going on there so they can make the right air pressure adjustments. And I believe Tim Fedewa's got a visitor down there.
Well, Tim Fedewa did have a visitor. Casey Mears just came up and asked you for a tip or two.
A big attaboy, because they've done a great job of 2 drivers keeping that car up front, and they're really focusing on that championship as far as the car owner side of it's concerned. I'm really hoping that they can put some more points up on the board this weekend and possibly get Johnny Sauter back to victory lane, this time in the 21 car.
Chase Montgomery ran 7 races for this Trim Spa team early in the season and returns to it this week. He also won the ARCA 200 at Daytona in February. Turned 20 years old this week.
Don't say that too loud, Mike, please.
No, please don't.
20 years old.
Yeah, we've done that twice and then some, but
Jeff's old enough to be his dad.
Oh, that really hurts coming from you, McReynolds. But I'd be proud to have a son right now that could drive a race car like this here. He's doing a great job. Talked to Sandy Jones, crew chief on the 27 car, and he said they had a pretty good transition so far. They were communicating pretty well. I look forward to having a pretty good run here this weekend.
not bad. 11th on his first lap, 31.428, 171.8 miles an hour. That's probably going to be in the top 36, maybe not by a whole lot, unless he can pick it up this lap.
He actually has slowed down on his first lap a little bit from what he ran in practice. We'll see if he can pick it up just a little bit on his second lap. He ran a 31.39 in practice earlier.
We'll see if he banked a safe one. Not really. 31.60. So it's 0.2 slower on his second lap. Marty?
Well, to stay warm down here, you kind of have to huddle up. So I found two drivers.
Put it all together, and that's the beauty of this team that I'm with at Earnhardt Incorporated. You know, they know that Busch car is another tool that we can use to make our Cup car better, and vice versa. So we just work as hard as we can with all the tools that we have and make smart decisions and hopefully come out on top.
Hey, McReynolds and Hammond want to know, you ready for trackside tonight?
Yeah, it was fun last year. I won the pole, and I got that little pedal car and had a little bit of fun. And I just love sitting around with Hammond and McReynolds.
They're nice guys, aren't they?
They're something.
What do you think about it, guys?
Was there any doubt in anybody's mind he was going to come out the roof hatch when he won that race last week? There was no question.
No.
Not in my mind.
We'll talk about that tonight. Jeff Fuller, former Busch Series Rookie of the Year, former modified champion of NASCAR in the NRA Foundation. Chevrolet, 31.57, 171.0, and that's going to be close.
Yeah, it might be kind of close, Mike, but it's a nice pickup from practice. He was only like a 31.90 in practice, and he's picked it up to basically almost a 55, 57. So, you know, at least it's going to give him a chance. Before that qualifying run, he was going to be kind of even worse shape.
Marty Snyder is building a fire down.
Jason Leffler from practice to qualifying, 17th to 7th, but you also made some big changes there after your practice session.
Yeah, we sure did, Billy Engel. So we need to change the gear, and that helped quite a bit. And we changed a few other little minor things with the car. But the car is handling really well in practice, just didn't have a lot of speed. So I think in the race time, you know, the Haas CNC Monte Carlo will be really good now that we found the right gear.
Hey, we've been talking about the wind down here while we were off camera, and you really felt the wind going into turn 3, didn't you?
Yeah, you do. It's hard to arc it in and get to that white line if the wind gusts, you know, the wind gusts and moves you up the track. So found that out running the truck here earlier this year, but keep thinking the truck's tight, or car's tight, and then you look at the flags and they're pointing straight down towards 3 and 4, but it's part of it.
Hey, McReynolds, I have to say thanks for giving me my shoe back, though, yesterday on the airplane. And Hammond, I don't know if I'm going to get you back or not. Maybe that was just a rookie initiation one.
Well,
how'd I get brought into this deal?
You've seen this car before, but not painted like this. Dick's Sporting Goods on the side of the Chance 2 Racing number 8. Remington Arms, that's one of Junior's associate sponsors, also on the car. And Hank Parker Jr. is back, and he's put up a pretty strong lap.
Yeah, and I mean, he was pretty quick in practice, 10th quickest. Boy, he got a little out of shape there running down on the apron. He's going to end up 8th quickest, and he's running 3 races for this team. He ran in Charlotte back in May, finished in the top 10. He'll run here, and he'll also run at Atlanta. This car, though, is the same car that Tony Stewart was so dominant with back at Michigan in August.
8 for practice.
Well, I was a little bit late, but I had to get my rest.
And so now we have to know why you were late for practice.
Well, I think I was probably sleeping, but I got there in plenty of time. So I think Larry and Jeff and they should go down and help Wally, because the two of them together ought to make at least half a good crew chief.
Oh, it's only a
thanks for trying to help out Wally, and thanks for sending the Zier up to upstairs.
Oh, no problem.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, I asked these guys this morning, I said, now, who's driving this car today? And they said, well, if we can find him, Kevin Harvick is.
Yeah. Jeff Green is behind the wheel of this 92, which returns to the circuit.
First time in several months. Of course, this team right here, they won the race at Darlington with Todd Bodine earlier in the year and led the points for a number of weeks with Todd.
In fact, they stretched their budget really quite far because they were on top of that point lead, didn't want to give it up, even though they'd not been able to attract much sponsor backing. So the former champ is in the Herzog Jackson Motorsports Chevy for his 4th start of the season, and he is 16th fastest.
And I tend to believe, I think the reason that they're racing here, I think this is pretty much the home for the Herzogs right in this area.
So Michael Waltrip, Casey Kane, David Green, Blake Mallory coasting in after his run, the 23-year-old from Joshua, Texas, trying to make his 2nd Busch start, but he is 2nd slowest with a 163.4. That brings out Todd Bodine, who has stepped in for George Devidart in the number 48. Shane Meal serving an indefinite suspension for violation of NASCAR's drug policy. Should I say anti-drug policy. And so here is Todd back in the Busch Series to make his 20th start of the season.
Led the points for a number of weeks driving for the Herzogs. See him fall down to the apron there, or complete his first lap, 31:03. He'll be 22nd quickest. Todd was 23rd quickest in practice, and that's about what he ran in practice. He ran a 31:06, so he's pretty much near his practice speed.
And Blake Mallory's run locks Chase Montgomery into the field, who is 26th fastest.
Cars that has been bumped includes Jamie Mosley, Jason White, Blake Mallory, and Rick Sanders. Now, that don't guarantee that they won't be in the show. They very well, some of those cars could be eligible for a provisional start.
A little slower on the 2nd lap for Todd Bodine. Marty?
Here's something you don't hear a race car driver say.
19th start of the season tomorrow. Let's go to Marty.
As Wally Dallenbach comes down to take the green flag, trying to make his first Busch Series start of the year. In all seriousness, they were just a little bit worried. They only got 6 laps of practice, and Larry Mack, I'm sure you've been in this position before. 6 laps of practice, lost the engine, didn't get a lot of track time today, so there is some concern. They're not worried about making the field, really, just they would like to, feel more comfortable about the situation they're in right now.
But they definitely, they are way down the list, though. They have to get in the fastest 36 to be in this show because they've not made a start this year. They have 0 starts, so they have 0 provisionals, but they had to put the engine in that they tested with, and there was a little bit of concern about that. But I'm going to tell you what, Wally will race tomorrow, 31.41. He's 26 quickest.
And that makes 5 of the bottom 8 in points are now in the show, and this will be actually Wally's second start of the year.
And you heard Wally talking in his interview at the beginning of the show, talking about the risers. This is actually the same race team as he wiggles a little bit down there in turn 3 and 4. This is the same race team that Matt Kenseth, and Wally used up all of the racetrack coming off turn 4, but he picked it up some more. He's going to be 25th quickest. You see this sponsorship on this car. This is a Procter & Gamble product that is a car wash that they'll be debuting the beginning of next year.
Mr. Clean Auto Wash, and the right rear of that car isn't as clean as it was when he started those 2 laps.
I was getting ready to say he might need just a little bit of that to wash some of that debris off the side of the car, because he used up every bit of the racetrack, and I'm surprised he didn't get in the wall harder than what he did.
But I'm pretty sure these guys will be changing this engine again, so they will have to go to the rear of the field, but I'm telling you, they're just happy to be in this field considering the day they've had.
That bumps Jason Schuler to provisional land, and it moves Stanton Barrett onto the hot seat just above Coy Gibbs, just above him, 35th and 36th.
Oh, we're good shape on that right
side.
Yeah.
But, so Wally Dallenbach cleans up the exit of turn number 4 en route to the flag, and he's in the show for tomorrow. O'Reilly Auto Parts qualifying day at Kansas continues in a moment.
I got it. Ah, got it.
And left to run, we've got Jeff Streeter, followed by the 43 of Shelby Howard, trying to move up from the ARCA series. So Morgan Shepherd on the hot seat, and Morgan is go or go home with that number 9 car. So let's see what Streeter can do here in his number 83 WildwoodInn.com Chevy from Vinton, Iowa.
He was right there on the window in practice. He was 36 quickest. He ran a 32.16. Obviously, we know that's not going to be very good. He's going to have to pick it up quite a bit from that, and he actually slows down. So right now, he's going to be 39th quickest.
But if he can find 3/10, he could be in the race, and Shepherd would go home. One of the 2 of them is definitely headed for the house.
With the throttle in the middle of the corner, just couldn't quite nail it down in the middle of the corner. The car just wasn't quite ready to take what we call just take a set.
And Jeff Streeter is slower on the 2nd lap, so he will not be in the field for the Mr. Good Sense 300 tomorrow. That leaves us one final qualifier. Shelby Howard, who's been one of the young rising stars of the ARCA series this season. Getting the nod to drive the 43 as Johnny Sauter's in the 21 and Kevin Harvick's in this race, but he's in the 29, and they'll explain it all to you tomorrow. Musical chairs. Shelby Howard gets a great opportunity here.
18 years old. In fact, a couple of years ago down at Daytona when he ran his first ARCA race, they were homeschooling him in the trailer in between practice sessions.
Now again, looking at the owner point list, and unofficially, he's got to make it on time. If he doesn't bump Morgan Shepherd out of the field, he is the 7th driver to go home.
And he was only 42nd quickest, Mike, in practice at a 32.45. We've talked about a lot of these young guys today. We keep hearing his name rumored, possibly headed to the Craftsman Truck Series next year.
And Morgan Shepherd, 61 years old, turned 62 just before Halloween, hanging on to see if he'll be in the show. No. Howard is quicker. Shelby Howard will race tomorrow, and Morgan Shepherd will make the long tow home to North Carolina.
Shelby's close, but he's in, 34th quickest.
No matter how you get there, as long as you're in, and that car looked really good through 1 and 2 on his first lap. He's really holding what we call a pretty wheel. The car's very stable, and he's really getting back in the throttle hard, coming up off the corners, making up a lot of ground. The second lap may be a little bit quicker there.
And the man that owns this car is Mike Curb, who owns Curb Record Company.
Second lap
down, don't matter.
About 2/10, but the first one's the one. And Shelby Howard will make his Busch Series debut.
Weeks when he spun out, well, that just helped set the car back on the ground along with the roof flaps and everything else.
Jeff Spraker, driver from out of the Busch North Series. His third Daytona attempt. He started 40th, finished 24th here last July. This will be his first race of 2003, driving a Pontiac.
You know, we talk about the whole key to running fast here by yourself is how much power you're making with that restrictor plate. In most places we go without a restrictor plate, if you just made a 1 or 2 horsepower gain, you wouldn't really see that gain on the racetrack. But 1 or 2 horsepower gain with a restrictor plate engine, you definitely can feel it. And I think Matt Yoakum's with a guy that's going to be doing double duty here this weekend.
Shane Meal, Larry Mack will attempt to do double duty. First off, the Busch car, 34th in practice. Shane, what's wrong with the car? Do you know?
Nah, I don't really know. It's same car that we brought here and qualified in the top 20 probably in February, but it doesn't matter. We started dead last at Talladega and finished third at drafts really well. My team gave me a really good car. It's not the fastest by itself, but when there's a car behind it and in front of it, it really goes good. So the grill to go, fire nice, cooler car is going to be really fast, I think, in the race. It might not be that good qualifying, but we'll get it dialed in for tomorrow night's race.
Now, you have to be excited about the 43.
Oh, yeah. I mean, to drive the King's car at Daytona where he's won so many races in a Dodge for Barry Burst Cheerios it's going to be a whole lot of fun. I mean, to be as close to friends as I was with Adam and to hate and be so sad that he's not here, to get to drive a car that he would have drove is just like...
Jeff Scott Riggs watching his spoiler go through NASCAR's inspection. Best start here is 7th. Do you like plate racing, especially here at Daytona, Scott?
I mean, it's always good if you have a great car and you can, be somewhere close to the front and have a good car that drafts well and be up to the front all day. But it's tough. It's probably one of the tougher racetracks for me, but just because it takes so much out of the driver's hands, it's a lot dependent on your car and how it pulls up in the draft and things like that. So it's tough. We just want to get out of here with a good solid finish because we've had so many finishes that were so bad at all these restrictor plate races the last couple of years. So we just want a good solid finish, get out of here unscathed and try to go on to the next race.
And one big reason why he wants to get out of here unscathed, the championship chase. He's only 45 markers out of first. Would love to end his Busch career if he moves up the Winston Cup. A lot of rumors circulating around this young man. Maybe next year move up the Winston Cup. He'd love to end his Busch career with a championship. Mike?
On the racetrack, Shane Meal. And if you're having trouble reading that number, join the NASCAR scorers in that regard. They have requested that George Debedart's team change the number on that car to a more legible color before race time.
Now I'm going to challenge you on that remark. I was a crew chief for 16 years. They never requested me to do anything. They told me what to do.
They told him to change the number. You're right. Shane Meal, whose dad, as Shane pointed out, his dad, Steve Meal, race modifieds with Jerry Cook and other folks from the Albany, New York area, where he grew up, moved down south to work for Richard Petty's operation, and then has been crew chief on several Winston Cup teams and is now the director of competition at Dale Earnhardt Incorporated.
And you notice this is a Pontiac, and the people at home, they may say, well, now, wait a minute, I'm seeing a lot of teams with a Pontiac Grand Prix here that normally run a Chevrolet Monte Carlo. We talked about the rear spoiler, and the rear spoiler is a big key to going around this racetrack fast. We talked about it being at 60 degrees. Well, the Pontiac, if you notice, on this 2002 body is very low in the center. NASCAR acknowledges that. They make them run a bigger spoiler than the Dodge or the Ford or the Chevrolets. But even with the bigger spoiler, the center of that rear spoiler is still lower to the ground than any of the other cars. So that's the reason even the Chevrolet teams elect to run a Pontiac here in Talladega.
And as you look at that rear spoiler, you'll see how curved it is there. NASCAR requires that the top edge of the rear spoiler follow the exact same contour of the trunk lid so that the height of the spoiler is the same all the way across. So looks a little different, works a little different too.
But yeah, I know they were confused because this car was not fast in practice, and he's going to end up 11th quickest on his qualifying run. But this car is the same car that has 2 top 5 finishes at Restrictor Plate racetracks.
Welcome back to Daytona, where Kevin Grubb is on the speedway in the Dr. Pepper Dodge. While we were away, 2000 Daytona ARCA race winner David Keith, driving for the Sadler brothers and powered by Ernie Elliott, ran a lap of 49.45, 19th quickest. That will put him in the field tomorrow night. Here's the 25-year-old from Mechanicsville, Virginia, who has 1 career pole. Started 30th here in February and 16th at Talladega.
Mike, we notice on a lot of these cars as they make these qualifying runs and run 2 laps, right at the bottom of the right side of the windshield, you'll see a mist coming out right there. And what that is, that's the radiator overflow. They tape these cars up almost solid, just a little bit of opening, because the more you can put tape on the front of these cars, the faster they'll run down the straightaways. But it tends to heat the engines up a little bit, and that's where the excess water, you see it right there on the 26 car of Kevin Grubb coming out right now.
Now, you used to put that overflow out the back of the car instead of right there at the base of the windshield.
The good thing, though, a lot of times drivers don't pay attention to their gauges in the race. That's a good sign. Hey, something's going on. My windshield's covered in water. I must be running hot.
Because once that engine runs out of water, the gauge won't register.
Exactly. And you know what's too hot? It's almost like if you get them over about 235, 240 degrees, the power starts falling off the other direction. Start losing power.
First lap for Kevin, 26th fastest. Right now, the quickest Dodge is Lance Norrick, 14th.
And speaking of Lance Norrick, I was talking to Kevin yesterday in this group. They've been sharing driving duties in this Dr. Pepper car, but now Kevin is supposed to be in this car the rest of the year for all the races.
And his second lap is a solid 18th, so he'll be in the field tomorrow night. Jeff?
Yeah, I'm down here right now with 5th place fastest Ron Horn.
Bud Pole qualifying for the NASCAR Busch Series at Daytona, where Casey Kane and Bobby Hamilton Jr. currently hold the front row. A lot of Pontiacs, as we've mentioned, because the Pontiac body shape for NASCAR's 2 fastest speedways in 2002 body style trim seems to be the quicker of the 2 GM nameplates. So we're seeing a lot more here than usual, and this is one of them. Larry Hollenbeck in a Pontiac number 62. Looking for his second career start.
The real challenge for NASCAR in making these teams still run the old body, a lot like what we saw in Winston Cup in past years, the bodies are different. The greenhouse area is very different. In other words, the roof and the windshield and the back window. So to try to equal the cars out, what makes it a challenge for NASCAR is most of the manufacturers have different size spoilers. We talked about the Pontiac. It's 7 inches tall, where on the Ford is only 6 1/4 inches, and on the Chevy and the Dodge is 6 1/2 inches tall. And also the Pontiac rear spoiler is 2 inches wider than the other makes, but still the center of that rear spoiler is down further. That's the reason so many teams elect to run the Pontiac Grand Prix here.
First lap for Hollenbeck is 30th fastest, and he's on the get-go list. He missed the show here in February. As you look at Dale Jr. and Michael Waltrip waiting their chance to run. So Hollenbeck well down the provisional points order. Probably will have to time trial into the field, and that means he's got to beat 5 more cars on this second lap.
I mean, just watching Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Michael Waltrip, it's hard to believe in Winston Cup that DEI, those 2 guys right there, have won 8 of the last 10 Winston Cup restrictor plate races.
Going to be a big battle for the bubble here in Bud Pole qualifying. Ashton Lewis Jr. right now the last driver locked into the field as Jason White has made his qualifying run 50.32 in the 0 car Eagle Jet International machine.
But let it be documented for everybody that saw our last segment on Speed Channel. You witnessed history. I've never seen anyone do an interview doing their entire 2 laps of qualifying at Daytona like Michael Waltrip did with Matt Yost.
Yeah, no disrespect to Greg Biffle, who was on the track trying to qualify the Kleenex number 7 and ran a lap of 49.01, which is 12th fastest for the defending Busch Series champion Biffle. Here's another Busch Series champ, Steve Grissom. He won the title in 1993, and he is back in this number 61 machine, a Pontiac, trying to work his way into the show. And this, he will be in the show on at least the Champions Provisional, even if that car doesn't get up to speed.
He was borderline in practice, 38th quickest. This is the same car that Toby Porter drove here in February. His first lap's only good for 38th quickest, but he still has a lap to go. And Ricky Pearson, son of David Pearson, is the crew chief on this car. They're actually keeping this car up in the shops at David Pearson there in Spartanburg. And I talked to Steve yesterday. They hope to run about 4 or 5 more races this year with this car.
So let's talk about provisionals, Larry. It looks right now Jimmy Kitchens, who did not make a qualifying attempt, will be going home, and so will the 79 of Joe Aramendia. The cars that are very close are Casey Atwood and Jeff Spraker to the go, no go list. Right now they're in the top 36, but should they get bumped out, those cars would also be going home. Jeff Spraker and Atwood and Brad Teague.
It looks like Steve Grissom probably is going to eat up one of those 7 provisionals that's available. He's only 36 quickest, which puts him on the bubble, and we still have Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Michael Waltrip to go. So chances are he will have to take that championship provisional.
Yeah, let's ink him in for the 43rd spot, which would go to the most recent series champion driver not yet in the field. That would be Grissom. So Kitchens and Aramendia will head home. Atwood and Spraker are close to the hot seat, and that would next put Brad Teague at risk of going home. Now Teague right now is 30th fastest, so he may well make the show as things play out here. The 91 of Jason Hedleski will not make a qualifying attempt, but is eligible for a provisional start. And next up the line, we'll have to dig a little deeper, would be Dan Pardis, the Daytona Beach driver. Regan Smith from upstate New York was not allowed to race here in Daytona in February because he did not have enough experience on the big tracks. So Jeff Fuller drove this car at Daytona back in February for Danny Bost. The 19-year-old is 3rd in the rookie standings, comes out of go-karts, quarter midgets, late models, and was the 1996 WKA karting national champion. They've got Courtyard by Marriott on the car this week.
And this deal with Regan, it came together so quickly, they didn't really get to test him anywhere. And I talked to Regan yesterday, and he said, Larry, I'm looking so forward to the second half of this 2003 Busch Series season because I'm finally going to be seeing some of the racetracks for the second time. Right. Almost everywhere we've raced, I've seen it for the first time in the first half. But you talked about Jeff Fuller driving this car in February. The only top 10 finish that this team has this year was with Tina Gordon when she drove this car at Talladega a couple months ago.
And I believe finished 10th. So Regan needs to step it up a little bit, 39th on his first lap. Now they are okay as far as provisional status is concerned. 5 drivers will go home, 48 entries here. Smith runs his second lap. And very, very close on the bubble situation. Right now, Steve Grissom is 36. If he gets bumped, he gets the champions provisional. Jason Schuler, 35th. Mike Harmon, 34th. Casey Atwood, 33rd. And Jeff Spraker are well down on the owner's points list that determines provisional starts. And Smith is 36th. With that second lap, that bumps Steve Grissom, who will start 43rd on the champions provision.
And I know
tomorrow, final practice for the NASCAR Winston Cup cars for the final Labor Day weekend shootout at Darlington. Noon Eastern Time, happy hour right here on Speed.
for Rich Markle in this 68 car. Did he ever have his hands full off turn 2 right there? Like you say, Jeff, it's so bumpy, and if the car gets loose, it just keeps getting looser and looser. If the car starts pushing or the front end don't turn, it just...
Trying to make his 10th Busch Series start. Phil Bonnefeld went out on the track in the Danny Boss number 22, but never got up to speed and pulled in.
Kevin Grubb was fastest in practice, but in this heat, Kevin, can you back it up?
Tell you what, I thought it was hot at 9 o'clock this morning, man. It's gotten a little bit hotter, but not much. We really haven't run that slow of a lap so far today, so I think we have a good chance at it. I mean, like I said, if it was cool this morning, now we're qualifying the heat, I'd worry a little bit, but I think we got a good car and we're running good in the heat.
Back to you guys.
Trouble, front straightaway, kisses the inside wall.
Kevin Grubb, who was our fastest man in practice, and again, he did that. How many times have we seen this coming to take the green?
Trying to do what Kevin Harvick did and carry as much speed as possible off the corner. He never gets off the corner. Oh, that's a shame. Let's have another look here.
And this is coming to take the green, up high through 3 and 4. Comes down just a little bit. Car just jumps sideways with him. Jeff just gets loose, and he just loses it. And again, that's coming to take the green when the tires are at their best. See the roof flaps deploy in there.
You know, you hate to second guess the driver, but this is what happens at this racetrack. You know, we talked to him a few minutes ago. He was really feeling confident that his race car would hold the same type of grip that it had this morning. This is where this racetrack will get you in trouble every time. It doesn't have the same kind of grip when the heat comes up.
So he's probably going to go from being fastest in practice to a backup car in provisional land.
Tough break for Kevin Grubb right there, because he had a very fast race car all morning long.
Here's Dave.
So starting spot so far, I think we'll end up in the top 10 or 12, and I've never made a qualifying run here doing it being rained out every time, so I'm looking forward to it. We got a really good race car and looking to get a sponsor on board. All we got is Gould's Pumps, hoping to find something.
Hey, he can qualify, people. Bob?
Well, Dave, Scott Riggs and I have been joking around about David Green's goatee. He said he's trying to mimic you. Do you think it makes him look meaner?
Well, I don't know if it makes him look mean. I know we all can be mean at different times, and we're definitely in a mean racetrack here, but all the guys on Nascar 4 is doing a good job, and we need to pick up a little bit from where we practiced. I hope we can. It's awful hot, so we'll see. And I know we all can be mean if we want to. If you want to see something mean, look at the points.
That's true. A very tight point battle, guys.
Hey, good run for Larry Gunselman. His first lap gets him in the show, but he has brushed the wall on lap 2.
Yeah, again, I mean, he was 14th quickest. He's in the show. Why not abort? Why run another lap? And now they've got a bunch of work. Didn't do it then. I'm going to start throwing stuff at you down in turn 2.
I hear you.
Gunselman is 14th. And as of right now, as you see them go across, the top 16 back through Jason Schuler there are guaranteed a spot in the race tomorrow.
A lot better. And I just, I wimped out on them. I should have had my right foot heavier in the loud pedal, and I didn't quite do my job. But we feel real confident about the weekend. The car's got a great setup, and it's just been loose all day. But in race conditions, this place generally tightens up, so that might be a benefit. Just thank Aaron's and all the support I get from them, and glad they were there last weekend for that big win.
Michael Waltrip, Mike.
Scott Riggs, first lap, 10th quick.
A report from Bob Dillner just a second ago that the clouds have rolled in and the track temperature immediately dropped 10 degrees, and that gives the car, the tires, more grip, better grip.
Riggs, in the first 12 races of this season, had only 4 top 10 finishes.
loose.
And in the last 12 races, 10 top 10 finishes.
Yeah, they've definitely got their program back on track. And you heard even with the conditions cooling down, his car was still loose. And you've got to respect this racetrack. And I think that's exactly what Michael Waltrip was trying to say when he got out of the car. I was a little bit timid, but at the same time, you got to respect this place.
Let's go back down to trackside.
And Mike.
Jamie Mosley's first lap not fast enough, 32 flat, and he tried too hard on lap 2. We've seen this before.
32 flat on.
Not make a qualifying attempt, and that we'll see how that sorts out in the provisional.
Back at Darlington, South Carolina, good news. We have a race car on the racetrack. 24-year-old Blake Mallory from Joshua, Texas, the first driver to clock in here at Darlington. Steve Burns alongside Larry McReynolds, Jeff Hammond down on pit road. It's Matt Yoakum and Bob Dillon.
And Larry Mack, I don't know about you, but for this young man right here, it's got to be a little bit kind of like unnerving to have to be the first car on the racetrack, especially after rain here at Darlington.
Well, this place is unnerving. It's intimidating. It's all the things that you could imagine. But to go out there after the racetrack has been wet, been dry, been wet again, now dry again, I'd have to say very intimidating. This is a third Jay Robinson car, a teammate to actually Derek Cope and Tina Gordon. You can see how loose he got off turn 2 right there. And he did struggle in practice a little bit, 45th quickest. We need to mention we have 50 cars here, so that means 7 will go home. To be in that top 38 speeds, you have to beat 12 cars.
And the thing about this racetrack, Larry, as you well know, it's a hit-your-mark racetrack, but it's almost like playing pitch and catch. You kind of pitch it down in the corner and catch it, and you hope it lands in the right place, almost like riding a motocross bike around a racetrack almost. If you look at it like that.
We see Blake coming off turn 2 right there, and almost everywhere we go on qualifying day, cars run right around the bottom of the racetrack. Well, down in 1 and 2, you run right against the wall. Down here in 3 and 4, you almost pick a groove where your car wants to go. It could be around the bottom in qualifying. It could be around the top.
The fastest driver in practice this morning was Casey Kane in the 38 car, the Great Clips Dodge. His speed was 169.351 miles per hour. So you look at Blake Mallory's speeds and times.
Great pickup for this young man here. He practiced at a speed of about 31.87, but look at coming off the current turn 2. Man, he's got a handful right there, Larry.
Well, you've been in the throttle. You picked the throttle up well before the center of turn 1 and 2, and you're carrying so much speed, it's almost like turn 2A and 2B.
Got Mike Beam and all the guys there, and I think we'll run good. You know, I think we have a legitimate shot for a top 10 first time out.
Don't hit the wall during your qualifying lap.
I'm going to try not to, guys.
All right, thanks, Bob. Shane Meal on the racetrack in the Trim Spa Dodge, trying to make his 9th Busch Series race of 2004.
He was pretty respectable in practice earlier. He was 13th quickest. This will be about his 3rd race in this car, but he did sign a 2-year deal to drive this car, and I think they're going to make the swap over to Chevrolets next year because the engines is going to be supplied by DEI.
And, of course, his father, Steve Meal, is the technical director at DEI, so they'll have a lot of resources there at their disposal.
Well, his first lap is good enough right now to be on the pole for the moment. He picks up, again, like everybody else so far, they've been picking up a lot of speed around this racetrack. We'll go back one more time and talk about the fact that most of these teams worked on race runs, so putting the fresher tires on, we're going to see much quicker laps.
He slows down about those 3/10. Again, I think we're pretty much going to see everyone's first lap the quickest lap, unless you really mess that first one up.
Shane Meal, the quickest of 3 to clock in today here from the...
Here as close to wide open as you can, and kind of fun, so we'll just see what happens.
Kevin Harvick, this is his style of racetrack. Guys talking to him earlier this morning. He says, I love to slip and slide out there.
All right, thanks, Bob. Mike Bliss on the racetrack. He has 3 poles this season at Vegas, Daytona, and Atlanta.
He's doing double duty here this weekend. He's going to be driving the number 0 Nextel Cup car here, as well as Homestead next week. Ward Burton was reunited. He's somewhat surprised us by saying, you know, it's not 100% determined that I will not drive this number 20 car next year for Joe Gibbs Racing.
And, you know, you always hate to kind of give your opinion about a team like this, and they're kind of trying to figure out what to do. But it looks to me like the chemistry's coming together. And you'd hate to see these guys split up when everything is looking positive and make a change that may be for the worse instead of
5th quickest. Good lap.
You know, Larry, you're right. Mike did say, I love my job, I love where I work, and I want to stay there. So, bit of a confusing scenario there at Joe Gibbs Racing, but, you know, a lot of teams are in the evaluation process.
And everybody's looking to try to improve their situation. And when you look at the second half of the year, it looked like these guys made the necessary changes and improvements to kind of like maybe give this guy a second chance. Almost like what I think happened to Michael Waltrip several years ago when it looked like he was going to go the other way, and they kept him in DEI, and I think that decision proved out to be positive also.
Kevin LePage on the racetrack.
Kevin was 35th fastest this morning in practice, so Larry, he's one of those guys that's getting down there real close to that gray area. He needs to pick it up on his qualifying run.
Well, and he's pretty much all but in the area of go or go home because he's way down the owner points list with this 71 car. So he really needs to be in that top 38.
LePage to the start-finish line. First lap, good enough for 11th quick of 14 who have timed in. LePage from Shelburne, Vermont.
And I don't know, the way this racetrack is seeming like it's picking up speed, that's going to be kind of a borderline time. I think you, to be real safe, need to run in the 29-second bracket.
I agree with you. I think 30 seconds or 30 seconds flat or better is really with the time you need to be looking at, and this is going to put him very close, but he's the closest we've seen to running 2 laps the same back-to-back, but he was just a little bit slower on his second lap.
So 14 drivers have taken time on the Darlington Raceway. Shane Meal still the quickest.
Just a little bit of that safer barrier coming off the turn 2 also.
So Harvick atop the charts as we speak. The 56 car, Tim Sauter, former ASA champion, has made 3 races this season. Made starts at Milwaukee, Indianapolis Raceway Park, and Memphis.
Tim was 36 quickest in practice earlier.
Guys, you know what I love about this racetrack? I think more than anything else is that we always talk about the competitors challenging the competitors. How fast can their car go? But here, it's the competitors challenging the racetrack. You've really got to go out and just basically defy. I think that's the thing that makes it so unique and so exciting as far as watching qualifying is who's willing to put it up on the edge and take a chance, and you know what they can get out of this racetrack. It makes it that much more exciting.
Tim's 14th quickest on his first lap, 30.21. That's about 4/10 quicker than he ran in practice earlier. If this racetrack is so abrasive, it's just like a piece of 80 grit sandpaper, and the minute you make 1 lap on those tires, it just takes the good out of them. From then on, it just continues to slide. He slows down just a little bit, so right now he'll be 14th quickest.
Kevin Harvick is the quickest. We go to Bob Dillner.
Casey Kane just arrived here next.
Justin Labonte underneath the green flag. Todd Bodine clocked in while we were away. Bodine 12th quick. In fact, Bodine trying to make all 3 races here this weekend. The NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series get the green flag after 8 p.m. here live on Speed. Carl Edwards, the pole sitter.
Justin's looking pretty good on this lap, isn't he, Larry?
Yeah, the only thing I did notice, a lot like Tim Fiedel, he bottomed out over in turn 2 and he carried it to the bottom of the racetrack. And a lot of that, a lot like smoking the left front tire, comes from faster speeds than you practice. And that first lap for Justin will be 10th quickest at a 29.50.
Looks up about 4/10 of what he practiced at. So that's the reason why when you start bottoming out, as you said earlier, when you go faster, you compress the car more in the racetrack. Again, you see the left front fender rubbing. Oh, easy, Justin. Used up a lot of racetrack on the second lap there. It looks like he's got a pretty strong qualifying effort right here in that 00 car.
And of course, when the car starts doing that, turning the steering wheel don't fix it. All you can do is roll out the throttle. Hopefully you roll out of it enough, slow the speed of the car down where you can get it back under control.
So Labonte, 10th of 22 drivers taking time thus far this afternoon, and we go back to Bob Dillon.
And this is my type of racetrack, so hopefully we can just have a good weekend.
to talk Memphis a little bit. Why is this your type of racetrack, Tim?
Well, I think just, you know, I always like the short tracks from my ASA days and ART-GO days, and this is just like racing Saturday night. I wish this race was at night, but it's just a good old racetrack. It's exciting short track action, and that's the kind of stuff I really like to race. And it's not a cookie cutter track. It's different from everything we go to, so I enjoy that kind of stuff.
Best start here at Memphis, 7th. Ralph will try to better that today.
All right, Dave, Travis Kittleson's trying to make his first career Busch Series start. He's in the Bob Steele Chevy. 23.434 to 115.217. He was 12th fastest in practice earlier today, just one session this morning here at Memphis. Quite a few teams came over and tested, and then they got done testing, and the Speedway put in the safer barrier. So that basically threw almost everything they learned in the test right out the window, because the line changed dramatically. Travis's second lap, a quicker one at 23.072. He picked up 2 full miles an hour. Mark Garrow.
Ron Hornaday was the quickest in practice, but you slowed down just.
His developmental program, that's something we're hearing more and more in this sport.
Yeah, get used to it, and it's going to be a word you're going to hear quite a bit of. Blake had some issues in practice spinning over turn 4, but didn't hear anything. Eric McClure out on the course right now in the 04 the Coyote Ugly Saloon Chevy. He's been in 4 Busch races in the past. 22nd place start at Rockingham last year in November was his best start. 23.537 on that first lap effort. Now you can watch them go down the back straightaway. See the bumps in there? Kind of a ripple effect, but a big one as they make their way down into turn number 3. To the line for Eric McClure. And he picks up the pace a little bit to a 23.174, and he'll move up to 3rd quickest. 4 cars have been out so far, and Hornaday is the fastest with the 22.8, the only guy to break into the 22-second range. Well, the next car out is one that will be welcome back to Memphis. Busch Pole qualifying. Ralph Shaheen with you, along with Dave Burns and Mark Garrow working pit road. And joining us soon in the booth, Kyle Busch, man who's number 2 in the points. Blake Fees is out on the track right now. Blake had some trouble in practice earlier today, looping the car down in turn number 4, but he didn't hit anything. His best start of the 2004 season last week at Charlotte, Lowe's Motor Speedway with a 5th. 23.624 to 114.291. Won't match that. That puts him 9th in the grid. He's got to get a little bit quicker. He wants to match that best. It's his first time at Memphis. Picked up an ARCA win earlier this year. And he gets quicker, 23.050, and guess what? That does match his best qualifying effort, if he can keep it. Mark Garrow standing by with the man who's number 1 on the timesheet right now. Mark, Barry Bradshaw was here. Derek Cope, you just saw running 10th with a 23.478. Mark?
Well, I'm down here with Ashton Lewis Jr. taking some grief from Lance McGrew because we both just about got run over by a car in the garage area. You're currently number 6 on the rundown. How did you feel about your qualifying lap?
Not real good. I was expecting to be able to run a 70. And for whatever reason, car really came in on the second lap, but we were really slow on the first lap. I think it just shows we weren't real aggressive in the setup, and probably need to get a little bit more grip out of that shock, a little bit more heat in the tires earlier, and just didn't come in soon enough for us. So it's disappointing. It's not the easiest place to pass, but we're going to try to figure a way to do it.
How frustrating is it for you to see your family-owned team having to shutter the doors here at the end of the season and look for new employment opportunities for 2005?
It's tough. I mean, just really my main focus. Obviously, I'm out there talking to other teams, but I really just want to get my dad a win before the season's over with. Thought we had a great car coming in this weekend. We had a little bit of problem before tech and couldn't run some of the suspension pieces I wanted to, and we're fighting that right now, I think, a little bit, but we're going to get a win before this year's out. You know, I'm going to do everything I can to do that, and the crew's behind us, and we're going to get this win for our dad, or for Charlie and my dad, and we'll finish this year out strong.
Ralph?
Aaron Fike just completing his laps with co-driver Leanne Rimes, and he's now 7th with a 23.067. Making his first Memphis start in a Busch Series car. He did make a start here in a USAC Silver Crown machine earlier this year, along with Tyler Walker, who was also here today. So we'll We'll be seeing Tyler take after it again. And that's what brings us here to Memphis. Brent Sherman's on the track right now. Has spent most of this season running in ARCA, making his second Busch Series start if he can get through qualifying. While we were away, Kenny Hendrick completed his laps around Memphis with a 23.620, his best effort. He is 13th for right now. And Brent Sherman out. Brent Sherman's other start was at Kansas. Started 35th, finished 37th. It's his first laps here at Memphis. 23.294 at 115.910. The track qualifying record, by the way, is 120.267 miles an hour, 22.450 seconds. That was set by Jeff Green back in 2003. Remember, that was with the little bit wider racetrack. Sherman with a 23.294. Actually, he just improved the second lap to a 22.896. A great run, 117.925, and he moves up to 5th in the number 58. So a great run for Brent Sherman. Looks like he'll get that second career Busch Series start. Dave?
Here's a guy.
No, so we got to figure it out.
What do you do when you're in a place and you don't know the track at all, and you go heading down into turn one? You're certainly not at 100% right away.
You're at 100%, but the times may not be. But it's just a difficult learning curve, because what the biggest struggle is, you're trying to figure out what you want your car to do after a long run, and you really don't know where the racetrack's going to go. That's what I've been trying to talk to some of the guys in the garage to get a kind of idea where it's going to go and what I'm going to look forward to. And they said forward by. That's what you're looking for. So that's what I'm going to try to get this afternoon.
All right, a lot of guys coming over saying hey to Bill. It's good to have him back in the Busch Series. Ralph?
All right, Dave, thanks. That's Mike Harmon out on the racetrack right now. And Mike's sponsored by Pigeon Racing Group. And I asked him earlier today what the difference was between Busch racing and racing pigeons. And he said, well, pigeons race in a straight line and we race in a circle. And that's about all I know, he said. Know the check cleared, and he's got sponsorship. Sometimes that's even more important. Mike Harmon right now puts himself 12th on the grid with a 23.239. And now we're finally joined in the booth. Make sure to tune in to the season premiere of The Simpsons on Fox Sunday, November 7th at 8 Eastern and 7 Central. Plenty of doors yet to go.
NASCAR Cup Series champion here, running in the Busch Series this weekend.
Bill Elliott trying to get used to Memphis. It's not an easy thing to do, is it?
No, not necessarily. But Bill, he's an old veteran. He'll definitely be able to handle it like anybody else would, especially him, because he's been to a lot of racetracks over the past years. So,
sporting a special Elvis Presley paint scheme that He Dared to Rock 250 benefiting St. Jude's. 22.848, 118.172. I'd say he's getting used to it rather quickly. He's up to 9th. How's his line?
It's not looking too bad. It doesn't look like it can hold the bottom down there in 3 and 4. Might have drove it in a little bit deep trying to get the most out of that number 9 Dodge. But overall, he should be able to pick up the second lap, and he does. So
how about the pole? 22.575, 119.601, and we are now a 1/10 of a second off of the track record. Now, he last raced in the Busch Series back in 1994 at Daytona, and he's got a Busch Series win at Watkins Glen. He had 36 career Busch Series starts, but he's never been to Memphis. And, of course, that Busch Series win coming at Watkins Glen on a road course, not on an oval. Dave?
Yeah, David Stremme and I were just down here talking.
Wisconsin's Johnny Sauter up next in the 27 car here at Memphis Motorsports Park, where Martin Truex has just ripped off a great lap of the 22.463. We are 100th of a second away from breaking or tying the track record, which was set by Jeff Green with a 22.450 in 2003. Well, maybe a little too far down on the bottom there for Sauter.
Yeah, I got a little piece of the candy stripe down there, the little rumble strip, but overall looked like a pretty solid lap. Didn't get too out of shape, but he's only 26th quick right now at a 23.229. So if he can pick it up a little bit here on the second lap, he'll more than likely move up the pylon there a little bit. Looks like a better run through 3 and 4 there. Didn't get quite as low, but low enough to where you don't want to hit that rumble strip. That'll kind of throw your car off a little bit of a balance. So he picked picks it up quite a bit, about 22.877. So that'll move him up to 13th spot right now.
He did have a pole earlier this year at IRP. Mark Garrow.
Well, there's chance to motorsport.
5 somewhere in there, but there's a few cars that'll beat that for sure.
Marty Schneider.
Ashton Lewis getting suited up here, and got some unfortunate news last week that your dad decided to close the family racing business. What happens from here for you, Ashton?
You know, we're not real sure. I'm out there trying to see if anybody's interested in me driving for them next year. That's what I'd love to do is to find another opportunity to go drive for another race team. If that doesn't happen, you know, or if I don't think that I can get a ride that's going to allow me to win races or kind of improve on what we had here, then I'm going to use that engineering degree I have and see if I can't find a job with somebody as an engineer for a race team and kind of work my way up that way.
We'll let him go get ready for qualifying. Focusing on this weekend's race, he said in race trim the car is pretty good. They did finish 6th in this race with this car last year.
Now, Lewis said the team will complete the season. We'll have more on that when he makes his run. Clint Voschholz is from Woodland Park, Colorado. He's 33. He has 5 Busch Series starts, 3 this season. This will be his first try at Kansas. He also has 2 ARCA races here and a number of Pikes Peak hill climb championships. He is a veteran of the NASCAR West Series.
Yeah, unfortunately, right now, he's the slowest of the 8 cars that has qualified, and this team has no provisionals. So I think that possibly is going to be one of our go-homers.
Many hints or anything when you go back or on live TV right here?
I guess he just woke up, so Martin, you got one to beat there, bud. Russell's got the pressures, by the way. Yeah, let's see how it all holds out. You know, like I said, Martin's going to be pretty stout. Tony's going to be pretty stout, and see what happens.
If he's awake, boys.
And of course, the pressures that Paul's talking about is what air pressure they put in the tires to go out and qualify. And I'm sure Mark Truex Jr.'s group, Bono Mannion, that group are interested to see what those pressures went out at and what they came in.
Sure.
Surely not, Larry.
Probably.
I mean, if you were the crew chief on that Mark Truex car, you'd be down there looking at their tire pressures. You'd be that confident.
Yes, I would.
You would.
I'd be wanting to know everything. How many RPMs you turn, the whole deal.
Yeah. How much tape? Yeah. Everything.
So what do you think, Bob?
Well, you know, it's funny you guys mentioned that because as soon as he parked his car and climbed out of his car, Martin Truex Jr.'s boys were down here checking out air pressure, checking out every single thing that you guys mentioned. So that's why you guys are the crew chiefs. They were down here the moment he climbed out of that race car.
Well, of course, once your car is presented to inspection, it's on the line out there on pit road to qualify. The only things you can really change is the air pressure and possibly a little bit of tape on the nose.
Gus Wasson in the Race Girl Chevrolet, 32.64. Let's see, they're in pretty decent shape for provisionals, and I'm afraid he's 11th out of 16, which is by no means safe because they're not that high up on the provisional list.
Well, and just remember, he would not get a provisional anyhow because he's in the top 35 in Nextel Cup points.
So, like Larry's trying to point out right now, he's got to hold his breath. He needs to go back there and sit down in here and kind of sweat bullets for a little while, Mike, to see how things work out. And right now on the track, young man I got a chance to spend a little time with last night, Travis Geisler, noticed after practice, he had a little bit of damage done to the right side of the car. He told me he got up a little bit too high into the corner going into one and got in that safer barrier. Didn't do a lot of damage, but did kind of make the car, as he said, a little uglier than what it was.
Comes out of the ASA and the NASCAR Southeast Series, which will have its banquet tomorrow night in Charlotte, North Carolina, for the 2004 season.
Travis was 33rd quickest in practice. He's seeing Kansas Speedway, though, for the very first time, as he has a lot of these racetracks this year.
DCT on the hood, Dreams Come True Motorsports, name of that race team. And again, another of the teams that is trying to put together sponsorship.
Yeah, they'd like to run the whole schedule next year. I talked to Ricky Pearson, the crew chief, this morning. He said right now it's possibly going to be a partial schedule about what like they ran this year. But Ricky told me one thing about Travis. He said, you know, I've been so impressed how quick this man picks up on things. He said the first Richmond race back in May, we were 5 laps down. NASCAR even got on us about running too slow. This Richmond race, we finished on the lead lap. Said he really picks up on tracks as he goes to them a second time.
He picks up more than a 10th on his second lap, so Geisler right now is 12th. Well, right now, actually, that was Wally Dallenbach. Now the fastest forward is Mike McLaughlin, who is 7th quickest. Casey Mears, the yellow transportation Dodge, in 2 Kansas starts, 13th and 6th with the green flag.
car has a little different look to it this week. Maybe it don't show up right here. I know as I was in the garage area this morning, it's a much brighter orange, and I think this is the paint scheme they're thinking about running next year. Of course, their headquarters is right here in Kansas, Yellow Transportation. He's 16th quickest on his first lap at 31:32.
What was the name of that color originally? It was Swamp Hollow Yellow or something. There's a big story about when this trucking company was started. The founder said, I want all our trucks to be easy to spot so they don't get in accidents. I want everybody to see them coming. And the brightest color they could find was much like this.
And I would say that's true because I know that this race car is very easy to see out on the racetrack as well. Bob, what's the story behind the color?
Well, Mike, you were really close on the color. It's called Swamp Holly Yellow, and that was the old color. Now they've gone to this brighter color, which, you know what, is actually an orange and not a yellow.
Well, I don't think they'll have to change the name of the company, but you never know.
Probably not.
Hopefully, I really think we have something for him in race trim.
And guys, Blake has been told that he will run the car tomorrow. Definitely, he does not know how many more races he will run for the rest of the year. He's hoping for more. And guys, the crew came down and said, hey, why did you go on the apron on that lap? And he said, well, the guys in the TV booth told me to.
and by the way, Blake and Jason Leffler are good friends.
Yes.
And they spent a little time together. Blake called Jason, we're told, when this news first came down, and he says, boy, I'm glad I'm going racing. I hate it happens this way. But they remain good friends, and that's good.
And, of course, Blake, like Boston Reed, is one of the Hendrick development drivers, and that 00 car, the Haas car, has an affiliation with Hendrick Motorsports. They actually use the engines from Hendricks.
Number 80 is Chris Horn out of Cedar Rapids, Iowa, the Seafoam Sales Chevrolet. He has 29 NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series starts. This would be his first Busch Series race.
He's a go or go home, and he was 50th quickest earlier in practice, and right now he is only 35th quickest on his first lap out of the 38 cars that have been on the clock. Let's see if he can pick it up a little bit.
Yeah, he needs a half a second.
He picks it up a little bit, but picks up no position, so that's going to be very borderline for Chris Horn.
Marty.
Mike, Ron Hornaday spent most of the day on top.
Practice here later on this afternoon after Nextel Cup qualifying, but watching the weather this morning, it looked a little iffy, so I think a lot of teams, as you heard Tony Stewart talked about, worked on race setup in that 2-hour practice this morning.
Yeah, a lot of teams did. They really worked hard on trying to get that balance and everything they needed because they really were afraid that the weather was going to come back in. They wouldn't get that happy hour, and they wanted to be kind of like ahead of the curve. And on the track right now in the 39 car, Tina Gordon, the Yahoo Ford. Got a chance to talk to Tina on the way up to the booth, and she was pretty down on herself right now because she really feels like she should be running better than what she is. This is the first time she's had an opportunity here to come to Kansas and really get after this track like she thought she should be able to. But she's been working on the line and trying to get it down, and she was hoping she could pick it up here Sunday qualifying.
10 races. She's still looking for her first top 25 finish and her first top 25 start. She did race here last July in the Craftsman Truck Series.
Yeah, of the 54 cars that practiced earlier, she was 53rd on the chart, so Tina's going to really need to pick it up on this qualifying run. First lap 33:32. That's only about 3/10 quicker than what she practiced.
And that trails the field by about 0.6 of a second. .54 cars here, 11 will go home. Right now, the 38th spot is Stan Boyd at a 32.05.
And what I hear with her car is she's just out of the gas so long. I know this morning in practice, the track had a lot more grip than we talked about. I talked to Casey Atwood, and he said down in 1 and 2, he couldn't run it completely wide open qualifying, but he only had to breathe it just for a second, about half throttle.
So 33:30, John Hayden will go home, and the final decision will be this man right here, Kenny Hendrick, who has one Craftsman Truck Series start at Kansas, his first run here in a Busch car in this number 51. And the question mark is going to be Eric Jones, who right now is 38th If Jones gets bounced out of the top 38, I think that would put Tina Gordon back into the field. Actually, it would just put Steve Grissom to where he's the last time provisional, doesn't need the champions provisional.
And Kenny would have to pick up 2 seconds from what he ran in practice earlier. He was the slowest of all the cars that took practice this morning.
That's exactly what I was looking at, Larry. Is how much has he got to pick up? Is it a couple tenths? But in his case, he's got to pick up over 2 seconds if he wants to.
Well, he picked up one of them.
Picked up one of them.
One down, one to go. 32.99 for Kenny.
He's actually got to run at least a 31.88.31 if he wants to knock Eric Jones out of the race and put himself in the starting field.
This is one of Rick Ware's Dodges. And the final qualifier completes his run, picks it up another half a second, 32.41, but that won't be enough to make the top 38.
That's a super effort to pick up that much, but it's a shame he's coming up short.
And that will take Hendrick out of the show and put, I believe, Tina Gordon back in. So
probably their schedule's worse than that, the NASCAR officials, because they're doing this whole process, Brian Dehart and his group, with 30 officials. That's about half of what the Nextel Cup garage has. So a big tip of the hat to those guys, too, to get 54 cars through pre-practice inspection day before yesterday and then pre-qualifying inspection this morning.
So today is qualifying day and it's final practice day for the NASCAR Busch Series, along with so much else going on today. IROC later today on Speed Channel, and the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series race tonight here on Speed. Brian Kahns with a very patriotic-looking paint scheme on his 05. Brian out of Livonia, Michigan. Practiced 47th. It's a brand new team looking to make its first start.
I think this is Brian's first attempt to make a Busch start as well.
Mike, listening to you there a minute ago, all the things that are going on here at the racetrack, guess what? Don't touch that dial, because it's all right here on Speed. You can see it all 24/7 basically right here on the Speed Channel.
Going after those NASCAR dads Ken Squire talked about from the studio with Busch Cheney 04 on the hood of Brian's car. Trying to get a little campaign momentum here. 52.94 on the first lap. And that is not going to move the needle at the Iowa caucus or the New Hampshire primary.
And once again, he's going to have to pick up over a second just to mirror his practice time from yesterday, and be one of those teams that they're going to about have to get in on the fastest 38. And that's going to be very borderline, very borderline.
Second lap complete for Brian Kahns, and he does pick it up with 0.6 of a second,
which is going to be pretty normal, I think. And it all depends on where you run that first line. If you run the first lap up at the top of the racetrack, you'll pick up more on the second lap. If you move the groove down, your pickup on the second lap's not going to be that much.
Brian raced in ARCA last year, finished 10th in the REMAX Series points. Here's Dave Burns down an inspection.
Yeah, where am I? I'm actually everything you got.
MBS 24/7. Once the checkered flag falls, what happens until the green flag waves again 1 week later? You'll find out beginning Monday night at 8 Eastern here on Speed.
Shows you all kinds of things, how the pit crew goes through training, some of the hours these guys put in, probably about like 24/7 the month of January.
Robbie Benton out of Harrisburg, North Carolina. J. Robinson Racing Ford, Mac Tools, the sponsor here for Daytona.
OJ, you know I have Keen.
And first lap there trails the field in the 11th. He is the second Ford to qualify. Mike Wallace ran a 50.17.
Talked to this group here this morning, and they've been struggling ever since they've got here to get some speed out of this race car. And Robbie Benton's daddy, he's been a longtime supporter of Robert Yates and worked over there, and so has Robbie as far as the Yates operation is concerned, and had some pretty good runs in ARCA division, as well as a couple of good runs here in the Busch ranks last year, but they really need to try to pick this thing here up if they want to get in the race.
Yeah, he gets to 51.96. That's quite a bit quicker than practice, but that's going to be very borderline. The magic number is 16, and the reason I say that is we have 54 cars here. You have to beat 16 to be guaranteed to be in the show.
Well, let's meet the fastest Dodge driver in town, Bobby.
That's right, Casey Kane.
Lack of oil temperature.
So that may be as big a story here at Daytona as who wins the pole, who goes home, and that list will likely include Mark Martin. Bobby?
Well, Mike, I just spoke to Tony Liberati, and I just want to let you know they did make a gear change in that car. Initially, Mark thought they didn't make the gear change, and he thought that was the problem. But Tony Liberati told me he thinks it is something underneath the hood of that race car.
Okay. Stanton Barrett on track in a Pontiac, one of few here, but there are still some team owners who run the Pontiac in the NASCAR Busch Series at the restrictor plate tracks. David Green will be out here in the Pontiac in just a little bit.
And again, going back to Mark Martin, you know, whether they changed the gear or didn't change the gear, it's still a gear problem if it is a gear. There's not a ratio you could put in there that would slow you down 2 seconds.
No way. They've definitely got a problem. Either the oil, or the gear got scuffed, or the transmission, something happened with the transmission. Something is not getting power to the wheels, whatever it is. If the engine's not missing, there's something going on. They've got the oil level too low, and something's happened to the air. So it's going to be interesting to see, but at the same time, it's going to be a heartbreak as far as Mark Martin's concerned to be sitting on the sidelines tomorrow.
That flag's standing out just a little bit straighter now than it was for the last 10 or so cars, and these first laps of the cars that have just run have really not been quite up to par, as Barrett hopes to make his 77th career Busch Series start on Saturday, the American Pontiac. See if he can pick up from a 51-59. We think about 50-60. 50-70 is going to be the range to get into this show, maybe in the 50-80s.
He was 34th quickest at a 50-91 in practice. He almost backs that up, lacking about a 51 flat. That's going to put him 23rd quickest, something we didn't document, though. I think you said he's 56 years old. C.W. Smith, he's in the show tomorrow.
How about that? Martin Truex Jr., Ron Hornaday, Kevin Harvick in Chevrolets, then David Stremmy's Dodge. Those are the 4 fastest so far in Busch Series qualifying. Stan Boyd of Holly, Michigan is on track trying to make the Hershey's 300. He has 1 career start at Dover last May, so looking to make his first at Daytona and his 2nd career Busch Series start.
38th quickest in practice yesterday at a 51.08. Steve Grissom, past Busch Series champion, he's locked into the field for tomorrow, so he will race.
And that raises the bump speed up into the 50-90 range. So here is Boyd, who is going to be disappointed with 51.45, and as a new team, no provisionals. That's likely going to be headed for the hauler. Now, still a lot of work going on in the qualifying line, not the tech line, but the qualifying line. Welcome back to Daytona. The 28 car is Kim Crosby, the principal of Slidell Junior High School in Louisiana, driving the, you have to read it off the hood, Boudreaux's Butt Paste Pontiac. It's diaper rash ointment, before you get too far afield on that.
I'm glad you were able to explain that.
I'm told it's really big in Louisiana, because down there they don't say Louisiana.
Okay. I talked to her a little bit earlier this morning, and she was really quite disappointed because she had high hopes of coming in here and making this race, and really felt like that they could get this car, you know, up to speed, but they just haven't been able to get it going hardly at all. And she backs it pretty much what she practiced at yesterday, but I don't think that's going to get her in the race today. And her and her husband both said they weren't going to quit trying. They were going to try to find them another car and put together a package and maybe wind up either in Atlanta or at Talladega later on this year.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to do it. They are not eligible for a provisional, and I don't think a 51.80 that's probably going to be about a second off what it's going to take to about get in this show.
Crosby has 3 ARCA starts and a top 35 finish at Talladega. Dave.
Well, they're going to be taking a look at the provisional options as far as that's concerned, and we talked about it earlier. There's going to only be 5 this time as far as provisions are concerned, so it's going to get kind of interesting.
And one of those will certainly be the number 10, even though it is not the Greg Pollock's team that Scott Riggs drove for. That team, or at least that number, has been sold or transferred to the car that Jason Schuler is in. So Schuler, based on car number 10's position in the points at the end of last season, Schuler will be in the show by virtue of one of the provisions. So that leaves 4. As Mr. Clean comes on the track, Wally Dallenbach Jr. out of Basalt, Colorado, trying to make his 9th Busch Series start.
Now he's taken the green flag, but notice how high he's running this first lap. So what this means is he'll probably pick up quite a bit from lap 2 to lap 1. Now yesterday, which we had a strong suspicion, him and his teammate and car owner Joe Nemechek, they were maybe what we call holding back just a little bit, but Wally ran a 50.36, which was 20th quickest yesterday. Now this is a Pontiac. Joe is actually running a Chevrolet. I talked to Brian Patty, who is motorsports director for over there, and he said that this car is actually set on the pole here and Talladega, but never finished a race. In fact, they nicknamed it Voodoo. I bet you they didn't tell Wally that.
Well, the first lap is 33rd quickest, a 51.02. So if he picks up the traditional half a second, it will put him right about 20th.
But I believe he'll pick up more than that because he ran almost as high on his first lap as he did his get up to speed lap. I believe he'll pick up those 7 or 8 tenths, maybe even a little more, like we saw Martin Truex Jr. pick up on from his lap 1 to lap 2.
That might put him in the top 15 or so.
You see, I mean, he's 4 lanes lower than he was through 3 and 4 on his first lap.
Car really looks good, and he's got it right down on that yellow line. Short way around the racetrack.
Wally will do some in-car commentary for the network tomorrow during the running of the 300. 21st, 50.445.
He did only pick up, Mike, just that little over half a second that you talked about. So he's right there, 21st quickest.
And he bumps Stan Boyd out of the top 38. That moves Kevin Conway onto the bubble. So Wally's in the show.
Dus is 100 fölfele. 100 fölfele, jobb 2 tempó, 20-ra bal 2 tempó, 25-ra bal 2 tempó, 25-ra bal 2 szűk, bal 2 szűk, és bal 2, és bal 2, majd 50-re jobb 2, itt a bal 2, és 50-re jobb 2, majd szűk 50-re jobb 3 az aszfaltra, szűk 50-re jobb 3 az aszfaltra.